Hey guys, welcome to our podcast where it has to be said. I'm Denise.
And I'm Heydi.
So today I'm with my friend Heydi. We grew up in the church.
Yeah.
And we've both had
Similar stories, I guess,
yeah.
right?
So in episode 1 I spoke about my beginning of when I became pregnant. Heydi actually became pregnant a year before me. She is
Right.
a year older though.
She wanted to copy me, guys. I get it. No,
So
we're
can
kidding.
you share a little bit about your experience? Because even though we were both within the same age range,
Yeah.
it was different for both of us.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I guess I was 17 when I got pregnant. I remember, man, it was difficult, right? Because you're so young and stuff, and it's like you're pregnant. How do you break it down to your parents? Like you go to church and you're like, oh my God, what is people gonna think? School and all that. But anyways, so yeah, it wasn't so easy for me to break it down to my parents because I grew up in a very like Christian and strict household. So I remember I was terrified. I told Achi, listen, I'm pregnant. We were going through some rough patch then, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to give him the opportunity to either if he wants to stick around or not, why not? And
So you wanted to have the baby.
well, I immediately knew I wanted to have the baby. I did not believe in anything else, and I was like, it's going to happen. And obviously, I don't know what was his expectation, whether he wanted to have it or not, but I told him and he was like, let's have it and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it wasn't easy because we didn't tell my parents right away. Actually, my mom ended up finding out because she found the prenatal vitamin in the kitchen one time. And, I thought I could get away with it for a while. And then, my mom was like, Heydi, what is this? Like, obviously, my mom knows what that is, right? And I was like, oh, I don't know, Ma, I don't know. She's like, anyway, she didn't say anything. I remember we were in the kitchen. My dad was in the living room. And I guess he was like overhearing the conversation. And I guess at some point they got together and they were like, oh, I think we need to have a conversation with Heydi because this is kind of weird. They sat me down in the room and oh my God, of course, I didn't even say the words I was pregnant. I just started boohoo crying. And of course, my mom knew immediately that obviously I was pregnant and she started crying and it was just like so emotional. But that's kind of like how I had to break it down because I was so scared to tell them.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was so scared at first because I was like, oh my God, like my dad is going to freaking kill me. I don't know what to do. But they were very supportive. And I'm so grateful for that because despite the fact that, I grew up in a Christian household and I was like, oh my God, how they're going to react. They actually reacted very supportive. And I'm so grateful for that because it kind of just helped me throughout my whole experience as a mom being so young. So that's where it started.
It was crazy.
It was a crazy one. And then obviously then we told Ashi's family and, maybe they had a little bit different they had a different idea, but I knew I wanted to have this baby. And so we had it,
Yeah. Like it wasn't an option for you. Like this was.
For me, it was an option. Obviously for him, it was like, listen, you don't need to stick around if you don't want to, because obviously I don't want it to be where you feel like you have to stay with me because we have a kid. You could stay or you could go. Either way, I'm still having my baby, right? And, he decided to stay. And yeah, I mean, obviously, I was grateful because I had a little bit of a support from him, but it wasn't an easy journey, you know? Definitely wasn't because at least I was ready for it. I think, for a woman, it's like the minute you find out, I think you're like, okay, this is happening. But for a man, it's a little bit different because they're not the one who actually have to go through the physical thing, right? Mm-hmm. They're more like, okay, whatever, I'm going to be a dad, I guess, It is what it is, but
nothing physically changes.
Nothing physically changed. I mean, I had to go to school with a belly. So like at one point, of course, I was ashamed of myself because I was like, oh my God, like, of course, like now you have people staring at you. Now you have people thinking like, oh, she's just one of the other ones. And it's like you're put into this box where people already like think that this is how you're going to turn out to be.
Yep, you're a statistic.
Statistics, right? And it's like, like, of course, at some point you're like, what am I doing? What am I doing? But I did it. I don't care. My parents were supportive. As long as I had their support, I was good. And I think at church too, I kind of got a little ashamed because I was like, oh my God, they're going to be like, what are they going to think of me? Like I'm the daughter of Edgar and Dana. It's like, oh my God. Like, so I think from what I remember, I stopped going to church throughout my pregnancy. Maybe I went there like maybe once or twice, but I really stopped going. And even after I gave birth to Jaden, I did stop going to church just because I was a little ashamed of, being a teen mom and all that. But it is what it is, right?
Which is crazy because, but I think it might also tie into because Elvis and I, we immediately made the decision to get married, right? You didn't make that decision right away.
No, and I think part of the decision why we didn't decide to get married was because, when you're told to do something and you as a young kid, you're like, no, you want to do the opposite. We were kind of told that was expected of us. So my dad was like, I'm okay if you don't want to do it. Like, I'm telling you right now, I'm okay if you don't want to. So I was like, all right. If my father felt that it wasn't right for me to do it, I respected that. And, coming from him, I was like, okay, maybe he knows something. Maybe it's not going to work out. And we didn't decide to get married right away. We actually decided to get married once we were already moved in, because that was another thing. We weren't even living together. Like, it was so different. Like, he was still living with his parents. I was still living with my parents, and it almost took almost 2 years for us to actually move into our own place. So imagine us like being husband and wife. We can't even like live alone.
Yeah,
we
didn't even make sense.
Like, it didn't make sense, and it was so difficult. So obviously we made the decision to get married once we were already living together, and that wasn't until I was already 21 when I made the decision. Okay, I think it's time, because one of the things important to me was like I wanted to be proactive at church. And I knew in order for me to do that, I had to do what was right? And to get married. So I was like, you want to do it? You sure? Because you don't have to. I never want to force you to do anything you don't want. He's like, no, we're already living together. We already have a kid together. Let's do it. So we got married. And I think at the beginning it was fine. It wasn't like, oh my God, we're married, because we were already living together. So it's kind of like, all right, there's just a paper that says you and I are married legally, right? So it started off good because we were kind of in that like honeymoon stage. But then, like, I don't know, it got rocky, We were young, and I guess we were just learning how to live together. And now we were married to each other. So it felt like there was like that thing that was like, okay, we have to make this work regardless because we're married now. And I gotta just walk away from you and that's it. I can't do that. So, we went through our moments where at one point I think I decided that I think it was best for us to even get divorced, to be honest. Because it got really difficult, Like, it was one thing for you to know somebody from the outside, and it's another thing for you to live with this person and get to know everything about them, their habits and everything. And I came to realize after we were living together, like, he was so opposite of me. He was so opposite. I was like, dude, you pretended to be this good person at first, and I was so in love with you, and I fell with that version of you. And now we're living together, and it's like, ya tú estás sacando las uñas, Now I'm getting to see who you really are. And it was kind of like, I felt like, I don't know, I felt like I was getting played, I had this version, and I thought this is what I had committed to. And then now you're here showing me who you truly are. And it's totally what I not expected, right? So that's when the problem started. All the, marital issues started, because obviously to me, this was something serious, I had committed to be with you. And to him, it was like, again, I don't think he took it as serious as I did.
That's how I felt too with Elvis. Is like, we stood at the church, but I think, now listening to Heydi, I'm like, we probably stood more at the church because we immediately got married. So kind of, even though we still felt some shame and guilt, in our mind, it was like, oh, we got married. So it was like, it almost felt like we rectified what we did
by getting married.
So it was like, okay, I can still be present. But then it was like, I feel like what you said earlier, like, I feel like as women sometimes, when we commit to something, we really commit,
do,
right? So even when we find out we're gonna be a mother, whether we're ready for it or not, it's like we automatically take that nurturing ability, and we're like, we're gonna take this role,
and we're kind of ready for it, despite how
we feel. That's what we're We're taught that our body is made for it.
You feel this baby inside you, so if it feels real, you know what I mean? As to them, they don't have to carry that physical thing, and so to them is, I guess, when they decide to mature, I guess.
Yep.
for me, it hasn't, like, I think for him, it's taking him way longer than...
They take them way longer.
I mean,
I don't have the data, but...
I mean, we're in our 30s, and I still look at him like, dude, like, seriously?
Like, when you gonna grow up?
Get it together, man. I mean, 2 years later and still... I mean, 2 kids later and still, you know, but... Yeah, it's like what you were saying. So I think a lot of it had to do with... I don't know if I made the right choice to kind of wait, but for me in that moment, it was right. And I don't know if because of that, I felt like we weren't blessed, you know, because we welcomed this baby outside of a marriage, you know. And, you know, you have all these things that people have, they have all these sayings that if you bring a baby outside of marriage, you know, like, it's just not, you know what I mean? Like, it's just they don't come into a blissful environment and stuff. But I guess, I don't know, because of that, it wasn't so easy or so good to us, you know. And we definitely had to go through a lot of rough patches.
So do you feel like you know, everything you've experienced and what you know, do you feel like there might be better times to make a decision of having a kid or even getting married?
I think so, because obviously nobody wants to get married at 17. I mean, I'm pretty sure that wasn't something you were thinking, like, I have to get married at 17. You know, you're so young. There's other things that you want to finish. And to me, I was like, okay, I don't think it's for me. It was right at that moment. And neither was for him, because he was just, you know, I don't think he was taking it serious at this point. He was like, yeah, he was just going with the flow. And I was like, okay, but this is serious, you know?
It's a big commitment. And I think now in this time is like, I feel like I see more people taking more serious the marriage commitment than before. Like, before it was kind of like either financial, there was some kind of gain, but it's like when there is no money, when the difficulties come, are you willing to still commit to that person?
Right. And that's where it gets difficult, because you kind of, I mean, you're kind of just jump into this without no experience. You're still learning how to be like, you know, you're a teen and there's a lot of things going on with you. So it's like, okay, now you have to have this whole, like, you have to be an adult, basically, you know. At only 17, I have to do things that probably, you know, somebody in their 30s are doing, which is where I am now. So it's like, that's a lot for you to take in.
Yeah, all at once.
And I think I took it the hardest because I was, like I said before, I was really committed to making this work, but, you know, he wasn't in that same headspace as I was. And that's what made it a lot difficult. Like I said, we did, at one point, I was like, I think it's best for us to go our separate ways. And we did go our separate ways, because I just couldn't pretend anymore that things were good between him and I, you know, because I did see that he wasn't kind of like okay with the things we were doing. Like, I wanted to be in church. That was what I wanted to do. But I felt like he was just kind of like doing it because he wanted to be with me. And it wasn't because it was really something that he wanted to truly do. And I think that's what created a lot of problems with us, because, like I said, I wanted to do things right, and he was just kind of still living his own world, and we couldn't live two separate worlds.
Yeah, it was either the Bible says it too. Like, you can't have you go to see God, because it's impossible to mix.
Right, you can. It's you really can, and so that's what really dragged me to make the decision for us to separate, which we did. We separated for, I think, almost 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
We did. We ended up separated. We live completely separate lives, you know? And I've been very private about my life, so I never kind of made
We didn't even want to talk about this.
Yeah. And it ended up, I ended up talking about it. But yeah, I mean, I never said anything to anyone. If you noticed it, you noticed it. But it wasn't like, oh my God, look, I'm single, you know, or we're separated, because that's how I've always been. I've very been private with myself. But we end up separating, and, you know, he ended up living his life. I ended up living my life. I was very focused on my career, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to accomplish. And I was able to accomplish a lot during that time.
Wow.
Yeah. And, you know, but it was still like, okay, what are we doing? Because we're separated, but we're still living in the same house. And it's like, it doesn't help for you.
It was like a situationship you had there.
Yeah, like there was definitely a situation there, because it's like, you know, you're doing your thing and I'm doing my thing. And I don't think it's right for our son to see that, because he was in the middle of all this, you know, like he came from having his mom and her dad together. And now he's living his own life and I'm living my life. And we come home, but it wasn't a home to us. It was just like, this is kind of like where we would sleep for the day or whatever, but it didn't feel like a home. And I know it affected Jaden a lot because obviously during that time is, you know, he was almost becoming a pre-teenager, and it was like, he's like, oh my God, like my parents are not, you know, together. Yeah. And, but yeah.
What made you switch then? Like what, because, you know, there's always a turning point in a relationship, right? It's either that turning point where we're going to continue our separate ways, right, or we're going to try to make it work. What do you think helped bring you there?
I think for us, it was our son kind of just, you know, he kind of found a way how to bring us together. And I think at the same time, I think when we had that conversation as to like, okay, do we want to really continue to live this life? Because if we do, then we have to really divorce. Okay. We can't continue to live this, you know, this double thing. And we're not going to be together. I think it's best we go our separate ways for good and make it official. And it was kind of like, he wasn't ready to let me go, I guess. And I think I maybe wasn't ready either because, listen, it's scary out there, you know, to put yourself out there. And all I've known was to be his wife. And all I know is to be someone's significant other, you know. And when I did try to put myself out there, I was like, oh, this is not for me. You know, I don't think this is for me. I'm an old soul. Like, I want to grow old with somebody. I don't want to be with somebody. And
you had that example.
Yeah, like,
so it's like, you saw that at home. You were with mom and dad.
Yeah, and I grew up with my mom and dad. And of course, that's what I wanted to continue to do. Like, I wanted to be able to. And it's so crazy because, right, you have your mom and your dad and you have that example and you want it so badly for yourself. And it's when you want it so badly that sometimes it doesn't end up working the way you think it could, you know? Because either the other person didn't have that proper example or didn't think it was what they wanted in that moment. But for me, it was like, I want this so bad. And why is it that now that I have it? Because I remember when him and I were in high school, we were like, yeah, I want to have babies with you one day. I want to get married with you.
He would write me.
He would do those little like love letters. I mean, I don't know if that was.
I used to get letters.
He used to draw us having babies, and I'm like, oh my God, look at this. This guy is so funny. And you know, it ended up happening. We ended up getting married. We ended up together. We ended up having a baby. And now that we have it, it feels like it's not enough. You know. He was still like in that little mentality where he was like, I don't think I'm ready to commit 100% because I don't think he knew what he was getting himself into.
Yeah. I think that sometimes we can meet the person that's meant for us, but sometimes it's kind of the wrong time.
Yeah.
And because it's so much growth that's required individually to be with somebody. I think sometimes we go into relationships expecting this person to make us happy and live this full life, which is good, but we need to learn how to be whole in ourselves.
Exactly.
And then we have different backgrounds and different lifestyles. So that affects how you interact. Because if you never seen a man respect your mom, or you never seen, you know, a solid home,
a stable,
you wouldn't know how to treat what you're creating.
And although he does come from a family that obviously his mom and dad are married and they've been married for a long time, but it's just, I think, to him, it was something that he was planning. Obviously, you're not planning this at 17, right?
Yeah.
And even later in life, you're still not planning this. And so even though for me, it was like, okay, I guess I have to now do all these things. But I was kind of like, I have the example. I learned it. So now, obviously now I want to do it with my own family now that I have it. But like I said, it was because we come from like different backgrounds. You know, I grew up in church. He didn't. You know, and I felt like at the beginning, yeah, he was doing it because it was kind of like a chase for him. Oh, you know, something different, something new. Like, I actually have to work for this girl, you know what I mean? To get her attention. So I think he was excited about that. Once we got into everything we always talked when we were kids, we were young. It's like, oh, this is harder than what you think, right? There's a lot of work. There's a lot of acceptance. There's a lot of understanding that goes into a marriage. I don't think he was ready for all that, you know, like. It's different. It's different. You kind of just, you know, saying this before and then now you have it. And it's like, you got to put in the work now because marriage is not a joke. Listen, marriage is not made for the weak.
It's not.
I'm sorry, but I mean, you've been married for a long time now, right?
It's not.
You have to put in a lot, you know.
And there's different things you're going to go through, right? So like for me, when we spoke, Elvis and I, you might not go through things of infidelity, but there is going to be financial issues. Right. There's going to be health issues. There's going to be so many different things you're going to have to go through that's really going to make you question, like, right. Am I really committed to this person? To what degree am I committed? And how much am I willing to put in work? Right. Because everything costs.
And imagine having to experience all that, infidelity, health, and money, because obviously we're young. We didn't, like, I didn't have a career.
We didn't have our money together.
I didn't have anything in my bank. I didn't even have a bank account. My first bank, it was like when I started college. I was like, I got my first Chase College, and then that's when I got my first bank account, and we didn't have anything. And then also, like, guys, I guess they see someone a little bit more attractive out there, and they just go with, they're just biologically, I guess, made that way sometimes. And we had infidelity issues, which also were a lot of the reasons why it kind of dragged me to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore, because like, you get tired of it, the fact that you have to go through people's phone, and like, you just don't trust this person anymore. Mm-hmm. And even part of the reason why I also left church was because there was an occasion with him and another girl in church, and it was like,
what's up with these girls at church?
I don't know what's going on, but anyways, it was just like really, like, this is church, you know what I mean? Like,
it's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing.
This is a space where you brought him to find Jesus,
and and we built a family together, and now you all here trying to, I don't know what's going on in his head, and it was just like one of those things. It's like, you know what? I don't think I want to continue. And I stopped going to church for a long time.
Yeah, you came back at one point, and then you kind of went hiatus again. I remember.
And then because of that, because it's like, wherever you go, it's like, my goodness, you can't even, like.
Did you ever feel like, were you ever angry at God at any point, like, in this process?
I was a little angry, and the reason why was because I was doing all this. I thought I was doing the right thing, and I was trying to, I got married, even though at some point I felt like I wasn't ready, even though I was already in my 20s. Mm-hmm. But I just didn't think he was ready. Mm-hmm. But I was like, you know what? Because I want to be proactive in church and I want to participate, this had to be done. So I was like, I did so much to kind of, like, to do the right thing, and it wasn't like God was, making things work for me. It's like you expecting that God is supposed to, like, make everything work for you because you're doing the right thing. But you have to go through these things. Yeah. I'm pretty sure every other marriage goes through this thing, but for you to go through it at such a young age, it's even more like traumatic.
Yeah, it is a trauma. I'm guaranteed that is a trauma.
It's like, if when it goes that bad, and like I did, we went our separate ways, and I tried to look for that elsewhere, and it wasn't easy to find it, because I don't know, things are different out there now.
And I think ideally when you connect with somebody else, everyone wants the same thing.
Yeah.
Everyone ends up wanting the same thing. And then even if you meet someone else, it's going to be still some conflict. There's going to be something I'm going to like about that person. Right. Like, there's always something.
It's like starting all over again. And it's like, I think that was one of the reasons that also I was like, you know what? If I'm going to have to start this all over again, might as well deal with what I have, because I already know him.
Yeah.
So it was, it wasn't easy at first, because I had so much anger towards him because of what he had done to me. And, like, I resented him. I think I still have a little bit of that, which is something I'm still working.
Yeah.
Because it's a process, guys. It is definitely a process, because I was emotionally hurt,
That was me and Elvis for a few years.
I was emotionally hurt.
I would bring it up. I would sometimes... Yeah. Like, you could be chilling and having a good time, but then you still, all of a sudden you remember.
Oh, but this and that, and you would bring stuff like that, and that was me. And, he would be like, I thought you would let that go. And I was like, it's easy for you guys because you guys don't experience that. But I'm pretty sure if they probably did experience that, they would be like, they wouldn't even be with us at this point.
No, they say, I be bringing it up to he'd be like, I would still be, I was like, listen, if you have receipts
with your ego
of stuff that I did,
screenshots and everything,
you would be like, deuces.
Bye.
They wouldn't be able to handle it.
They can.
Because they don't expect it from us.
And their ego too. As men, like, God forbid they do this to me, you know what I mean?
Oh, she would never do that to me. Right? I'm the best. Like, boy, bye.
But we can, right? We could try to make it work. We could try to put in the work. And I think that was my turning point where I was like, okay, listen, either we really go our separate ways officially or we try to make this work. Obviously our kid wanted us together.
Yeah.
He had left that house, and I remember one day I woke up and he was on my couch, and I was like, why is your dad here? He's like, I let him in. He said he needed a place to crash. I was like, oh yeah? But that's how it started, you know? He came back home, and we started going out. We started doing family things, and I remember it was like going out to dinner on the weekends with Jada, and that kind of just bonded us together again.
So it was like starting over in a sense.
It was literally like starting all over, but it was a little bit different because I still had that pain. Mm-hmm. I still, I was like, okay, we would be okay. And then it would just like little flashes would come to me, and I would be like, the anxiety of getting cheated again and like you doing this to me again. I didn't want to go through it again. I was like, I was tired already, Yeah. I felt I deserved better, right? And so, yeah, it felt like we were starting all over again. And I mean, fast forward, I think 18 years later, we decided to give each other a chance, and we ended up getting pregnant again. And I mean, that's another story.
That's a whole
nother story. That one's gonna have me with a napkin over here because that one really gets me.
It's your story. I mean, I feel like things happen and it hurts. Yeah. And it's hard, but they make you so much stronger and into the amazing person you are. Like I've seen you grow, because even though you've been in and out of the church, we've seen each other grow.
We have. I mean,
we're so complete different people.
We known each other. I was 6 when I met you. Yeah. You were probably 5 at that time. So yes, I think we weren't like right there in each other's life, but we were always keep track of each other.
It's not like we're besties all the time, but Heydi knows I would reach out. I do what I can. I think sometimes, as you get older and life hits you, all these things happen.
Right.
You kind of go into your own circle. Your own
separate, because you think you're the only one going through it, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're kind of like, okay, like, I'm kind of ashamed that I'm going through all this. And it just feels like you're just there in your circle alone.
Which is crazy, because had we talked to each other more, we
were actually going through this. I think we would have either find a better solution than...
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we would have been like, woman empowerment. We're out.
Right. Yeah, we probably would have even been sitting here right now.
But it's crazy, like, to think that people can go through things so much, and then it's like, with so many people in the world, we still feel like we have to go through it alone.
It does. And I mean... being teen moms, I'm pretty sure it was kind of alone for you, because I lost a lot of my friends.
Yeah, I isolated myself for some. I admit that I separated, but also it kind of becomes harder, because then it's like, I think you learn what kind of friends you have, or the friends that are fitting to that season, because I still had friends that didn't mind coming over to the apartment instead of me going out, because they're like, no, I'll see you and I'll go visit the baby too. So... you appreciate those friendships that
stick around, and
understand that your life's changed.
Unfortunately, I can't say that,
Really?
But I'm so grateful to have the friends I have now, though, because they've accepted me as a mom, and so they learned to, like, they've always known Heydi the mom, Yeah. And they did. My friend now, she got to know me a little bit of the little wild Heydi, because I did go through a little wild, a little wild point. So, like, obviously, like, it was okay with her, like, Heydi's a mom at the end of the day. Like, if I couldn't do certain things, like, she'll understand.
Mm-hmm. But we're also entitled to have fun.
But we're entitled to have fun. Listen, those 3 years, like, it was his loss. Now, I'm just kidding. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, talking about us deciding to have another baby afterwards, Amy, and I remember... we were at my parents' house, and my parents were like, oh, yeah, you should get, you should do a pregnancy test. You should do a pregnancy test. Achi, stepped out. He got the pregnancy test, and like my grandma was there. My cousins were there. Everybody was there. I was like, okay. I took the pregnancy test, and it came out positive. And I was like, oh, my God. I started crying. My dad was so happy. My mom was so happy,
Yeah, they were excited.
They were excited. It was different from the first time. But, when I went home that night, of course, I was like, oh, my God, we're doing this all over again. And the 17-year-old girl came back, and I started questioning whether it was the right time or not. But I was like, okay, it's a different time now. I'm in my 30s. I'm not that little girl anymore. I'm better financially. I have my own place already. Like, what is there to be scared of? Mm-hmm. But it was still questioning myself. And I remember one night I was watching TV and all of a sudden, like, I started panicking. I got into this panic mode.
Wow.
And I was like I called my parents and, I started like crying hysterically, and they were like, they freaked out. They rushed to the house and they were like, what's going on? And I tell them like I'm so scared. Like, I'm not ready for this, And they're like, no, you got this. Everything is going to be okay. Everything, happens for a reason. And anyways,
which is crazy because you had your first kid at 17.
Yeah.
Then years later, where you think is a good time to have it.
14 years later,
you're still like, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah, I'm still scared. And also part of it was because my marriage was still kind of in an icky place. Mm-hmm. We were still kind of working. It was, it's still a work in progress. But even then, we were still kind of like...
You were like in the healing phase.
In the healing phase, yes. And so like, I didn't know if this was the right time for us to have another baby, because we were like, still kind of like, are we doing this or not? Are we going to stay together or not? But anyways, so yeah, I end up, we were excited. I was excited, even though, of course, I was kind of scared. And I remember I hid it from work. It took me 3 months to actually tell my supervisor, like, I'm having a baby. Wow. And I was so private about it. And I don't know why was I private about it. But I think part of it was because I was kind of preparing for what was going to come next. And yeah, I remember I was halfway through my pregnancy. I was 19 weeks and we went for a regular ultrasound. And, they were checking to see how the baby was, whether she was measuring correctly or not. And the technician didn't say anything. She was so quiet. And when I did go into the office with the doctor was like, listen, I don't want to scare you, but I do want to prepare you. The baby, it's not measuring correctly. She's measuring a lot smaller than we anticipated. So we're gonna send you to another specialist. And so this was in the city.
Wow.
My parents, I don't know, everything happens for a reason. My dad drove me that day, and my mom was with me. And so I went to the appointment. They did the ultrasound scan. Again, the technician was so quiet.
I hate that they can't say anything. So it's like,
I'm not thinking that this could happen to me. I'm thinking maybe this is just a little bump in the road. And then the lady was like, "Oh, the doctor's gonna come and tell you the results." I was like, "Okay, whatever." We're waiting. The doctor comes in, and I remember these words exactly, like if it happened yesterday. She was like, "Listen, unfortunately, the baby doesn't have a heartbeat, right?" Wow. And I was like. At first I was like shocked. I was like, what? You serious? And my mom, she didn't hear it well. So I told her in Spanish, and I told her, I was like, me dijeron que la niña no tiene el corazón. And she's like, what? Like, you for real? And, it was kind of like a shocking moment. I couldn't believe it. She started crying. I started crying. And it was just like, I was like, I don't think this is real. This moment felt so not real, And I called Achi, I remember. He was at work, and I tell him, listen, they told me the baby doesn't have a heartbeat. And he was like, are you serious? Stop playing with me. I was like, I'm not playing with you. And, we have to we broke it down to the family. I don't know why. I think part of it, the reason why I was so private about it was because little did I know this was going to happen. I never did a pregnancy review or anything. Like, it was so quiet. Only my closest family members knew I was pregnant.
Few people know.
Very few people, and even few people at church knew I was pregnant. But, it was difficult, digesting that. Because I remember at the beginning, I wasn't ready. I was scared. And now that I was ready, it's like, this is taken away from me. And part of me, like, did want to question God, but I didn't want to, because I was like, listen, everything happens for a reason. But the only thing that kind of helped me in that moment was my parents. Like, honestly, I'm so grateful for them.
Wow.
Because I didn't know what could have happened that day, but I don't know what would have happened if they weren't there with me. And my dad driving me to the city that day and my mom being with me in that moment just made a big difference, because I could not imagine receiving that news by myself.
And then having to go home.
And having to go home and tell this to somebody, or just having a shoulder to lean on. And I was grateful that I had my mom right next to me and I had that shoulder to lean on. And, you know, the following days were a lot more difficult, because it was the actual moment with the baby. You know, I had to they had to remove the baby, and, you know, I wasn't ready to let her go. I couldn't believe it. And I remember the following appointment was the first step to do the procedure to remove the baby. Wow. And my mom was there again. I'm grateful she was there by my side. And
Dana's the best, yo.
I swear. Mommy, if you're listening to this, Daddy, thank you so much, because I don't know what I would do without you guys. You guys have been with me in the most difficult moments of my life. You've been my biggest supporter. And so that day, I remember telling the doctors who was doing the procedure, I was like, can you please do one last ultrasound? Like, I believe in miracles. My mom, too, she was like, yes, please, like, do one last. You know, we've been praying, and we believe in miracles, and we believe that, you know, God can do something right now. And again, the doctor was like, there's no heartbeat. Look, there's no movements. And in that moment, I was like, okay, this is it. I gotta let go. And then the next day, it was the second step for it. And that's where they put me to sleep. And, you know, don't remember what happened. Obviously, I was asleep. And waking up in that hospital bed was difficult, because, you know, I went in with a baby in my belly. Wow. And then I went out, no baby. And a part of me was just taken away, you know? It made me feel empty inside. And for a while, I felt empty inside. It almost felt like there was a void, right? Obviously, to me, your baby.
You were carrying the baby.
You were carrying life, and all of a sudden, you don't. And, you know, I had to learn to hold myself with God, because I knew this was the only way I could get through it, with God. And also my family, who didn't let me go home. They actually was like, you're gonna stay with us for a week at least, because I think you need us at this moment. And they were right. Wow. Because if I would have gone home.
You stuck longer than a week though, right? With them?
No, a week. It was actually a week, because I had to go to work the following week. And I remember, I was there with them, and they took care of me like a little baby. I slept next to my mom.
Oh my God.
I know, kick daddy out. But, you know, like that meant so much to me, because I needed them. Although here again, I felt like, oh, you know, I'm a big girl, I got this. No, like, I needed them. And that helped me a lot, because God forbid I would have gone home. I would have been overthinking it. I would have, you know, just dragged myself into like, to a dark place. And I didn't want to go there, right? And like I said, again, I think my only way that I knew that I can get better and heal from this tough moment was God, you know? And that's when I decided you know, I have to better my relationship with him. And fast forward, you know, 2 months later, we find out we're pregnant again, and we're having another little girl.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, you know, this is God right here. What are the odds for you to lose a little girl and now have another little girl? And my goodness, was it the happiest day of my life? But again, I was scared, you know, having to go through this again. And I think halfway through the pregnancy was the scariest one, because I lost the second baby halfway through. Mm-hmm. And when it got to those 20 weeks, I was like, oh my God. Like, it wasn't like I was expecting something bad to happen, but it was kind of like,
you can't forget. It was
like something bad gonna happen.
It
had just recently happened. And I remember, like, I would call my mom, be like, mommy, like, I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm so scared. She's like, Heydi, tienes que tener fe. Remember, ya Dios dijo que todo va a salir bien. And I was like, you're right, mommy. But, you know, the human person, yep. I'm human. So I'm like, you know, I'm so scared of what can happen. And, you know, so grateful. I got to have my little girl, my rainbow baby. She has brought so much light and so much happiness, you know. Of course, she doesn't replace the baby I lost, because I always think about the what if, you know. That baby would have been a year next month, and, you know, it just can't.
No, it does.
She's, you know, She's always in my mind.
She's still your baby.
She's still my little baby, and I know one day I hope to get to heaven. I hope to meet her, right? But I'm so grateful for what I have now. It's definitely been a journey. It's been a difficult one because I had to learn to lose and let go. But God said, I got something better for you.
Wow.
And he gave me back our little girl that we wanted always. And, you know, like I said, she has brought so much light and so much happiness into my life. And that void that I felt has been filling up slowly and little by little. And man, well, what would I do without God? You know, God is everything.
Yeah.
He's faithful. You just gotta have faith.
And I feel like in this process, you know, anyone who goes through it, it's easy to question God. It's human, right? Like we go through things that are gonna question, like, is God real? Is God for me? Right? What did I do to deserve this? But you took a different approach that I'm sure you've had thoughts in your mind, but you still stood in church.
Yeah.
You know, there were other times in life that we spoke earlier that it pulled you away, that you were like, I can't do this. And in something that was so difficult and like almost impossible to some to overcome, you were able to stay there seeking God and kind of cling on to him. And I think that shows the strength and how much you know he loves you and you love him enough to say like, I gotta be faithful to you.
Yeah, no, and let me tell you, I did want to question, but I didn't dare to say anything. But in my mind, I was like, why this is happening, you know?
Yeah.
And I think Achi also took it hard because he did question God why this happened. You know, we were all excited about, we're having a little girl, you know, so obviously the whole family was happy. And, you know, for him, it was like, why you did this to me?
Yeah.
But, I told him everything happens for a reason. Maybe we needed to learn in that moment what it was like to lose something we wanted. But, you know, later on, God has something better for us.
Wow.
And he still repaid us by giving us another little girl, you know? And yes, we're not going to forget the one we lost, but now we look forward to watching this little girl grow and just be part of our little family. And I know that she comes with a purpose, you know, because I don't think if it was for that, I would probably be in church, you know? I that was kind of like a reason why it dragged me to stay. And no matter what, I was like, I'm going to hold myself to you, God, because you have promises for me. And you said that I was going to be able to see them through. And I've been able to, you know?
Wow.
And I'm so grateful for that, honestly.
And it's bringing, I feel like, the family together too, because Achi's been coming more.
Yeah, he said he's been telling me about he wants to go on Sundays now. We've been telling Jaden too to come, you know, step by step, you know. But we're slowly gonna get there, I know, and I know soon enough we'll have the whole family there like we used to back then.
And I think it's like, you know, having this relationship with God is a relationship. Yeah. It's work. And it's an experience that we have individually, right? So I can tell you how good God is. Yeah. And I can tell you God is love. I can tell you all those things that are true, the things I've learned in the Bible. But it's not until you have those difficult moments and those experiences that you're just like, he is real.
Yeah, because I tell my friends about it. And obviously they understand. But they don't kind of really understand the spiritual aspect to it. And I tell them all the time, listen, I could talk all day about how wonderful is God.
Yeah.
But if God hasn't been that person in your life, you will never understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
So you have to really go through those difficult times to kind of make you, you know, just like realize there's no one else than God.
Yeah.
He's the only one that can give you everything you need and you want in that moment. Not in the moment that you want it sometimes, but he'll come through eventually when the time is right.
Because everything works together for our good.
Everything works. You just have to be patient.
Yeah. Whether it's a month, 2 months, a year, it'll happen if you believe.
Good things happen to those who wait, right?
Yeah. So, it hurts and it sucks to wait.
Hurts. It
but, you know, we're growing. You look glowy. And
that's God, you know?
You look happy. Half of this we didn't even want to talk about and you ended up bringing it forward. But no one can take away your story.
Of course.
No one takes away your experience. And the best way to show God is by sharing who we are and where we've come and how we've made it here.
Right. And I hope if anyone out there is listening and is going through something like that, listen, God is there. He's real. He listens. So don't lose faith. I know it's difficult. And in that moment, you're like, nah, this is too much. But he's there for you. So hold on to him.
It was a good talk, and I thank you for being here.
Yeah, it had to be said.
Take care, guys.
Bye, guys.